All right, I'm still around, but I've seemed to have been very busy, but not doing very much. I've been bogged down with this tourbillon. It's okay making it in plastic, but it's so crude and rough, and it's a long way off my vision of seeing one in shiny brass and silver finish and working by clockwork and as an elegant piece to put somewhere to look at, rather than sticking a bit of plastic. Not quite the same thing. Biggest problem I have before I even try to make anything is the hairspring. I can't find any information about sizes, thicknesses, where you can get the metal even from to make a hairspring from. I bought a box of 10 little ones, which was £8. Nice little springs. Unfortunately, even the biggest one is not big enough. The next thing I couldn't find was any correlation between sizes of balance wheel to the size of the escape wheel, how big the hairspring should be to the size of the balance wheel. I can't find any information at all on that. I did find one man who's making a hairspring using piano wire, but that was round. And YouTube hasn't come up with anything for me. There are dozens on how to straighten them, and even how to sort of make a new one from an old one. But not much use, I'm afraid. This is an escapement which I'm considering as a possibility. The diagram is in Britain's book, Dictionary of Watch and Clocks. You can see how complex it is. I mean, there are so many construction lines here. And when we're talking of 4.5 degrees and so on, that's quite a big diagram. And I've been making it smaller than that. And the idea is that if I'm cutting a wheel, then I've got to make it a fairly simple one on the ends here. I don't want one of those with the club ends and so on. That would be too difficult. Because I'm planning, rather on using fly cutters, of actually CNCing it with a 2mm end mill. I don't know. It really is a complex job. This is a photo of an engine I built some years ago, 7.25 narrow gauge Hunslet. I bought the general arrangement drawing from a museum somewhere up north, I think, and I used that to work out the dimensions. And it's a pretty good replica of this World War I engine used behind the lines for transporting munitions and so on. Of course, it was originally a dirty black, no doubt, rather than this green and lined and everything else. So what I thought I'd do is make a 3D printed one, a copy. I've got the drawings, of course, and what I've done is I've scaled the drawings down to 1/3 and slowly printing the bits out. Unfortunately, I'm a bit limited in the length of things. My printer is, 220mm, so these boards should be up to here, so I'll have to glue in another piece. Not quite long enough. Trouble with making things in printed, 3D printed stuff. It takes so blooming long to print. I mean, that boiler tank, that took 15 hours to print. It's a bit slow, that's the trouble with it. But every now and again I do a bit. It's all separated because I don't want to glue it together just yet. It's easier to paint it first and then glue it afterwards. Parts of it I'm happy with, but other parts I'm not. The end of the boiler looks quite good and so on, and the idea was that the door would hinge. I don't like the finish, that's the trouble. When you get a gentle curve like this, it's a series of ridges, so I've got to improve on that somehow. Anyway, I do a bit of that now and again, and it keeps me busy while I keep thinking about this tourbillon. Well, I've got this far, and from a distance it doesn't look too bad. But actually I've had all sorts of problems with the printer. I had a thermal runaway at one point, and although the panels look okay, they're not flat. Whether I've got them too thin at 2mm or whether I needed a support on the inside, but they're not dead flat. Also, I've tried a primer filler on a test piece, and I can't rub it back because of all the little tiny rivets that show, and it still shows up the printed lines. I'm not happy with it. So I'm abandoning it for the moment. I'm not going to do any more. I've spent so many hours printing and reprinting and doing it again and again, and I'm still not happy with the finish. It would be okay from a distance, but it's also so light, and it would have been nice if the wheels could have turned round. They will turn round if I use them twist them by my hand, but running gear is not feasible, not to work. So that's it. I'm abandoning it. It's a 3-flute, 3-bladed cutter. Unfortunately, I don't have a holder, a collet for it. So I've had to use a drill chuck, and I don't really like milling with a drill chuck, so the feed rate is very slow. Seems to be alright, it's coping anyway. So what next? Well, I haven't abandoned the idea of making a tourbillon, but I will have to come up with a better idea of an escapement than the one in the book. That's far too difficult to make. And in the meanwhile, I think I'll make another model. Only this time, I'll make a proper model in metal. And this was my last engine that I made, the Arn Young Graf Schwerin-Lowitz. Runs on the Brecon Mountain Railway. So, I've got the drawings, of course, and I shall do a scale model of that. Well, these are the two side frames. Nice to be cutting metal again. It's 1.6mm thick brass, CZ120, and the drill holes are just marked. I'm not sure yet how I'm going to join them together because the bolts are going to be pretty small. As far as I can calculate, it's going to be BA12. Now I've got some BA12 hexagonal set screws, but I haven't got anywhere near enough, so I thought I'd buy some. 5 for £1. I need 64 just to join up the corners, so I shan't be using that method. But I do have a lot of BA12 cheese heads and plenty of nuts. So what I think I might do is to put the cheese head in from the inside, the nut on the outside, and then cut it off flush, and when it's painted it'll look like a bolt head. The problem with using the drill chuck to hold the milling cutter meant that it was too long. I couldn't get it in far enough, and so when I cut the first one, when the cutter goes down to its depth for cutting, it wobbles, and it can be clearly seen in the corner here. This was the first one I did. It's much worse than the second one. In the second one, I'd taken the drill chuck and drilled a hole right up through it, and this time allowed me to put the cutter into its correct depth. But of course it's not got the rigidity of a proper collet holder. However, it's better than the first attempt. Not that it shows up too much. It's going to be hidden, most of it anyway, on the underside of the bodywork. The next job is to do the buffer beams, and I've got to do the scale drawings for those. And the scale is 1/5. I couldn't quite manage the quarter. The X and Y travel on my milling machine is not quite long enough to do a quarter size. Even so, the finished one should be just under a foot long. I'd be happy with that, I think. Anyway, that's it for this week. Thanks for watching.